Welcome back to LV Scary Stories. Today we're delving into the haunted corners of St. Paul, Minnesota, a city renowned for its rich history and close-knit community. Beneath its charm lies a supernatural side, where whispers of the past seem to linger. In today's episode, we'll unravel three spine-chilling tales of haunting in an old family home, a bizarre encounter in a quiet room, and an eerie presence in a grocery store. Each story will leave you questioning the thin veil between the living and the dead. So dim the lights, settle in, and prepare yourself for a journey into the mysteries of St. Paul. Let's dive into our first story. Story 1: The Girl in the Fireplace Room. In 2006, my three friends and I traveled to St. Paul for the cultural New Year celebration. When we arrived, my uncle picked us up. While we planned to stay at a hotel, he insisted we stay at his place. And honestly, we couldn't resist his offer. He had roasted ducks and drinks waiting for us. We celebrated late into the night, eventually crashing in his second living room, the one with a fireplace. Now, my uncle's house is old. That room had just two small windows, no outside door, and a dim, almost shadowy atmosphere. Exhausted, we all passed out on the floor. My friend Chum was sleeping next to me. After my uncle and his family went to bed, they left the hallway light on so the house wasn't completely dark. At around 2 a.m., I woke up to a strange floral smell. My body felt frozen, like I couldn't move. I could barely open my eyes, but I was facing the doorway to the dining room. That's when I saw her, a girl with long hair, peeking at us from behind the door. Her face was pale, almost as if it was covered in dry, cracked white paint. When she smiled, small flakes of paint fell to the floor. Slowly, she stepped into the room. Her long hair seemed to slide off her scalp like a wig, revealing she was bald. Before I knew it, she was sitting on my chest. I couldn't breathe or move, no matter how much I tried. It was as if she was draining the life out of me. Eventually, I gave up fighting and lay there, paralyzed, until I blacked out. The next morning, I woke up feeling exhausted. On our way to the celebration, I casually asked Chung if he'd felt anything weird during the night. He laughed and said he'd had a dream about meeting a beautiful girl. In Australia, of all places. Strange, because Chung had never even been to Australia. 3 years later, in 2009, a relative of ours passed away in St. Paul. My brother and I attended the funeral, which lasted 3 days, as per our tradition. After the second day, we stayed at my uncle's house again. My brother and I ended up in that same fireplace room. At around 2 a.m., I woke up to the same floral smell. My body froze. Dreading what I might see, I forced my eyes toward the doorway, and there she was. That same girl with her haunting smile and falling hair, emerging from the shadows. She walked toward me, her bald head glistening under the dim light, and sat on my chest. The sensation of being pinned and helpless returned. Morning couldn't come soon enough. Later, I asked my uncle about the house's history. Without mentioning my experiences, I casually inquired about the previous owners. He told me he'd bought it from a couple who had a teenage daughter battling cancer. After her passing, they sold the house and moved back to Australia. The revelation sent chills down my spine. Since then, I've avoided staying at my uncle's house. Oddly enough, when my cousin became a teenager, he began experiencing sleep paralysis there too. It got so bad that he started spending nights at friends' houses. The experiences stopped only after he moved out for college. Story 2: The Spirit of the Unborn. In 1998, my sister-in-law had been sick for a while. At the time, many in our community didn't understand her condition. She suffered from severe chest pain and swollen breasts, but despite the doctor's recommendation for a biopsy, her family refused. Instead, they turned to traditional religious treatments. After giving birth to her daughter Mimi, my sister-in-law's condition worsened. Her breasts remained swollen and painful. Not long after, she passed away. My brother was devastated and stayed home for 8 months before returning to work. Sometimes he'd drop off his daughters Mimi, now a toddler, and Kia, her 4-year-old sister, for me to babysit. Kia would often talk about her little brother Steven. I assumed he was an imaginary friend, so I played along. But her descriptions of him always gave me chills. One snowy day, I babysat at their house. That night, after putting the girls to bed, I settled in to watch TV. Around 9:45 p.m., I heard a door creak open. Expecting Kia, I glanced toward their room, but the door was still shut. Then I saw her, my late sister-in-law. She was standing at the end of the hallway, holding a baby with an abnormally large head. Terrified, I rushed into the girl's room, locked the door, and stayed there until my brother came home. The next morning, I told him everything. He revealed that when they first moved in, they'd found a bloody trash bag in the bathroom. Police suspected it contained the remains of an aborted or stillborn baby. After consulting a spiritual healer, my brother learned there was a spirit in the house, a baby who had latched onto my sister-in-law, causing her illness. The healer performed a ritual to detach the spirit and set it free. Afterward, Kia never mentioned Stephen again. Story 3: The Grocery Store Spectre. Our final story takes place in an unassuming Asian grocery store in St. Paul. Though bustling with customers by day, strange things happen when the doors close. Employees often report shadowy figures, eerie whispers, and items moving on their own. One night, a worker stayed late to stock shelves. He heard footsteps behind him but saw no one. Moments later, a cold breeze brushed past him, and he heard a faint laugh. It was enough to make him quit the next day. Other staff members have their own chilling encounters, but few are willing to share. Thanks for joining me today. These stories remind us that even the most ordinary places can harbor the extraordinary. Sleep well if you can. Until next time, stay curious and keep the lights on. Let me take you back to when I worked at a grocery store that always had an unsettling vibe. The store, as I'd heard from others, used to belong to an American family decades ago, though no one could confirm it for sure. My job was straightforward, stocking shelves, but being new and a bit shy, I hadn't made any friends yet. There were cliques of co-workers who chatted and joked with each other, but I was the quiet one, waiting for someone to approach me first since starting conversations wasn't my strong suit. One day I had to head downstairs to grab some supplies. If you've ever been to this store, you'd probably remember the dimly lit yellow bathroom in the basement. It always had this weird, eerie vibe to it, like something was just off. As I reached the basement, I noticed a middle-aged woman standing near the bathroom door. She was wearing high heels and looked like she was waiting for someone to finish inside so she could use it. I didn't think much of it and went further back into the storage area to move some boxes. About 5 minutes later, I heard the sound of her high heels clicking against the floor, heading in my direction. I assumed she was coming to ask me something, but when the sound suddenly stopped, I turned around to look only to find no one there. The air felt strangely cold, and an uncomfortable feeling crept over me, like someone was watching me. I grabbed what I needed and quickly went back upstairs, trying to shake off the odd experience. After working there for a while, I started hearing stories from the other employees. They claimed the place was haunted. Most of them refused to go downstairs alone, always pairing up for trips to the basement. Eventually, I became friendly with one of the older employees, a guy I'll call Chong. One afternoon, Chong asked me to help him grab something from the basement and move a few boxes in the back. I was helping an elderly customer carry her groceries to her car, so I told him I'd join him as soon as I was done. After helping the customer, I came back inside and saw Chong heading down the basement stairs alone. I followed him down a minute later, figuring he'd already started moving boxes. When I got to the storage area, I started working but noticed Chong wasn't there. I was confused because I was certain I had seen him go downstairs. As I moved some boxes, I noticed a small gap between the stacks, and through it, I could see a face staring back at me. Assuming it was Chong, I called out, asking how many boxes he wanted me to move. The figure shifted slightly to the side, as if acknowledging me. I continued stacking a few boxes and then walked around to the other side to talk to him, but there was no one there. I called out for him, my voice echoing in the empty basement. No reply. At that moment, panic started to bubble up. I dropped everything and bolted upstairs. When I got back, I saw Chong standing at the front of the store, casually chatting with the cashier. He turned to me and asked, "You ready to head down now?" I must have looked pale as a ghost because he immediately asked if I was feeling okay. I stammered out what had happened, describing the face I'd seen and how I was sure he'd been down there. Chong's expression grew serious, and we decided to head back to the basement together to check things out. But when we got there, the space was empty. No one else had been down there the entire time. I worked at that store for 8 months before I finally quit. While my time there wasn't terrible, the unsettling vibe of that basement never left me. To this day, I can't shake the feeling that something or someone was watching me every time I went down there. I'm sure plenty of other employees who've worked there have their own creepy stories to tell. Hope you enjoyed this eerie tale. Thanks for sticking with me until the end, and as always, I appreciate your support. Have a wonderful day or night, wherever you are.